Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do. Podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about adjusting to divorce. A divorce is a traumatic event in your life, and it does take some adjustment. So we're gonna, pick back up on that. Among 272 divorced women surveyed, an average of 14 years after divorce, about half had initiated the breakup, but about 80% of the whole sample said it had taken them 3 years or more to feel comfortable being unattached. And that's just because, you get used to being married to someone else. You have a spouse, and you have a life together. So when you become alone again, it doesn't feel right. You're uncomfortable, and you're not used to just thinking about you. You're used to thinking about other folks too, because the spouse comes into play. So, it is an adjustment. Older women, those without young children, those who had not been abused during their marriage, those with higher incomes, and those who had had good legal representation during the divorce tended to adjust better, because if they're older, they're a little bit wiser, hopefully, and if they hadn't been abused, then it was probably not a volatile relationship that has caused them trauma. If they have higher incomes, they can support themselves just fine. They're not worried about having to get a divorce. Excuse me. And if they had a good lawyer. I may not have had the best one, even though he was a guy I used to work for. But, I don't feel like he was looking out for me. Otherwise, he would have insisted on a few more things that would have been to my benefit. Women are more likely than men to live in poverty after separation or divorce, because there's still a portion of the world where you have the woman staying at home. And also, even if the woman is working, we're making our 78 cents, I think it's up to now, better than, 75, compared to, the dollar the man makes. So we're still not equal in income. So it's going to hit the woman harder. And usually the woman keeps the children in the home, so she has more coming out than he does. So, a lot of women, like I said, it'll get to you. And sometimes you have to do things, swallow your pride and get food stamps or whatever you need to do to make sure your children are having a good life. Excuse me. Many have to deal with continued struggles with an ex-spouse who may default on child support. And our county was really big into that for a while. They took my ex-husband up there 2 or 3 times. And I had to go up there and say, well, no, he is giving us this. He's paying this bill, giving this. So he is paying what he's supposed to be. He's not writing me a check, but he is paying what he's supposed to be. Because he was being a little jerk and saying he thought I would spend all the money. But it's like, no, I'm not immature. I'm not going to not pay the bills and do things. But, that was his excuse. I think he just hated the idea of having to give me money in hand, so he'd rather pay bills and buy food and clothing and things than put it in my paw. An important factor in adjustment is emotional detachment from the former spouse, and that's something that is hard for a lot of people, because you got married because you loved each other, so it's hard to detach from that. And a lot of people unfortunately have a love-hate relationship. Even though they don't love him anymore, they hate him to the point where it's like they love him, because they're so obsessed with him and worried about him all the time, People who argue with their ex-mates or have not found a new lover or spouse experience more distress because, all that drama. And some people just can't not have drama. I don't like that at all, but it is a thing in some people's lives. They thrive on drama, they thrive on stress, and that's not me, and I can't deal with it. An active social life, both at the time of divorce and afterward, helps. And I did go out with friends more. And I mean, I still would if I had a car. I don't have a car. And you know, he works a lot. We have a farm. We have elder parents we're helping take care of. So, you know, there's not a lot of time in my life for that. But you know, I welcome it. Remarriage and step-parenthood. That is, you know, a thing for a lot of people. A lot of people have first marriages that they end up in a second marriage. And a lot of these second marriages have, you know, kids already in there. And then it becomes a step family. Remarriage, said the essayist Samuel Johnson, is the triumph of hope over experience. Because it is. You hope it's going to work out, but your experience was that it didn't. The high divorce rate is not a sign that people do not want to be married, because it just means it's easier to get a divorce, and most people do want to be married. Instead, it often reflects a desire to be happily married and a belief that divorce is like surgery, painful and traumatic, but necessary for a better life. That's how a lot of people feel about it, and that's why I got divorced, you know, twice, because I wanted to be happily married. I was not so happy, you know, with someone trying to control my life, and with someone, you know, being abusive towards me and the kids. You know, that's definitely not gonna make me happy. So, you know, it's easier to get divorces now, and I think that's what a lot of people have in mind when they get a divorce. Is like, I'm unhappy, this is not working for me, I want out, I want to be happy. And you know, that's what I told my husband. I said, I'm easy. I said, all you gotta do is, you know, love me and keep me happy, and we're good. I don't have no problems. I'm not gonna try and force you to be this, that, or the other way. Do this, that, the other thing. You do you, I'll do me. We'll meet in the middle. Cause that's what I want. I just want to feel loved and be happy. That's it. I'm easy. In the survey of 272 divorced women reported in the preceding section, while more than 50% said they did not miss marriage, more than 90% say that they would consider marrying again if they met the right person. And of course that's true, because we all love love. We want to be in love. We want to have the perfect spouse, and there's no such thing, by the way. And, you know, live happily ever after. Again, no such thing, by the way. It takes work. You know, you got to learn to compromise and have understanding and compassion for another person if you love them. 3/4 of divorced women in the United States remarry within 10 years. And, you know, most people I know that got divorced ended up remarried, either to the same person because they learned more, or got counseling or whatever, or to a different person that made them happier. Young women under age 25 are more likely to remarry than older ones, but also more likely to re-divorce, because again, they're only 25. They're still young. They're still trying to figure out who they are. You know, that's why I caution the psychologists. They'll say 30 is the magic number when it comes to getting married. So young folks, think about that. You know, get yourself a nice foundation under yourself first before you start pairing up and bringing other little people into the mix, because if it don't work out, then that's a problem for everybody. You know, men are even likelier to remarry than women. And I heard one psychology teacher say one time, and said, well, that's because the women take care of the men. They want somebody to take care of them. Thus, only 8% of men and 10% of women are currently divorced. So think about that. With a close to 50% divorce rate in any given time, then we have only 8 to 10% of people who are actually divorced, and that's because of the remarriage. You know, and a lot of people, they'll stay in a marriage so they meet somebody else, and then they'll divorce that person and immediately go marry that person. It's like, you know, a baseball trade or something. I don't know, but that's how it seems to work. Half of those who remarry after divorce from a first marriage do so within 3 years. Remarriage rates are somewhat lower in Canada and Europe. Remarriages are more likely than first marriages to end in divorce. So that's the bad news there. Because you got the first divorce, it's easier, you know how to do it, and so if the other marriages, aren't working out so good, it's all easier for you to just stop those too. The likelihood of redivorce is greatest during the first 5 years, especially when there are stepchildren, because as we all know, children are a stressor on a marriage, much less stepchildren. That's somebody else's child, and you just came in the mix, and that can be stressful. Remarried partners may be less likely than partners in first marriages to have similar interests and values. And usually your first marriage is somebody you may have went to high school, college, or been in the neighborhood with, or somebody you worked with, someone you have close contact with, and have a lot in common. You have history together. Whereas subsequent marriages, it might be somebody you meet at the grocery store or a bar, or through friends. So you don't have that history together. So if the differences are pretty big, you don't have a lot to fall back on. And having once divorced, they may be more likely to see divorce as a solution to marital problems. Also, the adjustment to living in a step family can be stressful for both adults and children. Because the increase in step families is fairly recent, social expectations for such families have not caught up yet. In combining two family units, each with its own web of customs and relationships, remarried families must invent their own ways of doing things. And that's right. You're now a new family. You were this family and you were this family, but now you're together and you're a new family. So you have to, come up with the ways your new family is going to do things. And both parents should be on board and talk and, come together with the plan of how things are going to go. Becoming a step parent may be especially challenging for women. Interviews with 138 step parents who also had biological children in the home found that women have more trouble than men do in raising stepchildren as compared with raising biological children. And usually that's because of the competitiveness between women. That is a thing that I have been preaching on since 2004 that needs to stop. Women backbite on each other. Women hate on each other. And that's not good. That cuts us all down. So yeah, you might dislike the ex-wife or whatever, but you need to get along, and you need to not take it out on her kids that you don't like her. This may be because women generally spend more time with the children than men do. It does not seem to matter whether the biological children are from previous marriage or the present one. The more recent the current marriage and the older the stepchildren, the harder step parenting seems to be. Especially if, it is a preteen or teenager. They're not going to want some stranger coming into their house and telling them what to do. They got a mom, So it can be a little more challenging. And that's why both parents need to get on the same page, decide what the rules are, what the punishments are, and all that kind of fun stuff, and how things are going to work. And then that way the children know what to expect. Step parents seem less able to separate their feelings about the marriage from their feelings about their success as step parents than they can with regard to their relationships with their biological children. Let me see. Okay, I'm back. It is harder, because you love the other person. You've become a blended family. And if you and the kids don't get along, that's going to affect the marriage. That's a shame, but it's true. Because, you're more in love with your own biological children than you are the others. So this parent's going to favor them, and this parent's going to favor them, and that can cause some serious troubles, between folks. The connection between satisfaction with the step parenting and with the marriage may have to do with the fact that both begin at the same time and are inextricably linked. So if you marry a person with children, you already know you're a step parent. And you can't pull them away from the kids. They're a unit. So when problems arise in raising stepchildren, the step-parent is likely to blame the biological parent, for example, for taking the child's side in an argument. The biological parent, whose relationships with the child is more secure, is less likely to blame the step-parent for trouble involving the child. So, if you're a secure parent and not worried about how they're going to treat your kids, then it's going to be easier. You can, deal with a case-by-case basis of misbehavior, whatever needs to be dealt with, versus, oh, don't you say that to my kids, or whatever. I would probably be a terrible step-parent. I don't know. I don't know. Any man that came in when my kids was little, God bless them if they if they did the wrong thing. I had a little reputation as being a mama bear. Still, for people who have been bruised by loss, the blended family has the potential to provide a warm, nurturing atmosphere, as does any family that cares about all its members. And that's the important thing, that a family cares about everyone. I have never had that, so that would be wonderful though. I have seen it, and it's good if all the family gets along, and you can have like the Brady Bunch style thing. It's never going to be that perfect. They did a pretty good job of portraying how siblings fight, I think. But it's best if you can get along with folks. Okay, sorry about that. That was my dad calling. he's 83, so you gotta talk to them when they call. One researcher identified several stages of adjustment, and anything is an adjustment. Getting divorced, getting remarried, becoming a part of a step family, all of these things, as well as everything else that can happen to you in the world, is an adjustment. At first, adults expect a smooth, rapid adjustment, while children fantasize that the step parent will go away and the original parent will return. So, custodial parents, when these things start, you need to make it clear. It's like, no, we're getting married, this is happening, sorry, excuse me. As internal conflicts develop, each parent may side with his or her own biological children, and like we said, that's just normal, because that's your biological child, and so you're protective of them, versus the others. So, like I say, if you're going to be a step parent, you're going to have to be fair. You're going to have to love them, as if they were your own. Eventually, the adults form a strong alliance to meet the needs of all the children, and that's how it should be. The step parent gains the role of a significant adult figure, and the family becomes an integrated unit with its own identity, because then it's a new family. You had this one and this one, you put it together and you got a new family. The bonds forged in young adulthood with friends, lovers, spouses, and children often endure throughout life and influence development in middle and late adulthood. And of course, this is true. I still have some friends. I'm friends on social media with a woman that I've known since second grade. So we've been knowing each other a long time. And I've got some more from fourth grade, some from middle school, high school, from the old neighborhood, so, people are an important part of your life. Even if you don't love someone anymore, you still love them. Like old boyfriends, there's still a spot. If it was a good breakup, if y'all break up because he was the evil piece of poo-poo, you're probably not missing him or have any feelings for him. But I have, male friends that I'm still friends with that I have a soft spot for because they did mean something to me in the past. And it wasn't a bad breakup. It's just I want to go with someone else, or they felt like we need to break up for this, that, or the other reason. But it wasn't bad. It was a amicable split, if you want to call it that. And so we do have feelings for folks, even in, to the later years of our life. The changes people experience in their more mature years also affect their relationships. Of course, that's going to happen. Hopefully, you grow and mature as a person as you get older. That's the goal there. When does middle age begin? Is it at the birthday party when you see your cake ablaze with 40 candles? Is it the day your baby leaves home? Is it the day when you notice that police officers seem to be getting younger? When does middle age end? Is it at your retirement party? Is it the day you get your Medicare card? Is it the first time someone younger gets up to give you a seat on the bus? Middle adulthood has many markers, and they are not the same for everyone. At 40, some people become parents for the first time, while others become grandparents. At 50, some people are starting new careers, while others are taking early retirement. As in earlier years, all aspects of development are interrelated, because nothing happens in a vacuum except vacuum. The primitive, physical, functional pattern of the morning of life, the active years before 40 or 50, is outlived. But there is still the afternoon opening up, which one can spend not in the feverish pace of the morning, but in having time at last for those intellectual, cultural, and spiritual activities that were pushed aside in the heat of the race. That was written by Morrow, Lindbergh. And that's true. In the beginning of adulthood, you're getting yourself together. You're getting yourself figured out. You're getting a foundation laid under yourself, getting a career or, whatever underneath of you so you can go forward. Now, when you become older adults, you're not so busy, you've been established in your career, or you're leaving your career to retire. Your children are grown and doing their own thing. So now you have time to do the things you want to do. And that's a good time. We're going to talk about Mahatma Gandhi, the father of a nation. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, sorry I messed that pronunciation up, 1869 through 1948, was called Mahatma, or Great Soul, by the people of his native India, whom he led to freedom from British colonial rule through a decades-long campaign of non-violent resistance. And that's something we could use in this country a little bit more, non-violent resistance. It doesn't have to be a fight. You can express yourself and not do it violently. That's something people have forgotten, I think, nowadays. His revolutionary ideas and practices profoundly influenced other world leaders, notably Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King Jr. He is considered one of the greatest moral examples of all time. And now there's, of course, rumors and stories about him beating people and blah, blah, blah. But, as far as we know, what's fact, he was a very good moral person. The son of an uneducated merchant, Gandhi admitted to less than average intellectual ability, but his linguistic and interpersonal skills were strong. So he admitted, I'm not the smartest man on the block, but I'll talk to you, all day long. He had a keen moral sense and was a lifelong seeker of truth. That is something that, I respect, when people have a strong moral sense, because there are so many people in the world who do not nowadays. They don't understand what morality is. Excuse me. And truth, even our political leaders like to play with the truth and, make up whatever they think is cool. So, that's also not something valued a lot today, is truth. He had the courage to challenge authority and take risks for what he saw as a worthy goal. As you should for anything that you think is a worthy goal, take a risk, As a lawyer in South Africa, another British colony, he saw and experienced the discrimination the Indian minority suffered. It was in South Africa that Gandhi began to develop the philosophy of satyagraha, nonviolent social action. He organized civil disobedience campaigns and peaceful marches. There's actually some film left of those that you can, Google and look at, or go to your library and look at. Time and again, he invited arrest. In 1908, approaching his 40th year, he was jailed for the first time. Eventually, he would spend a total of 7 years in prison. So, like Mandela, he spent a lot of time in jail for, being an activist. Gandhi felt he could not proceed as an ethical agent seeking a better life for his people unless he had himself attained and come to embody moral authority. So, he was walking his walk. He wasn't just talking his talk. He had to purify himself before he could make demands of others. He moved with his wife and 4 sons from the South African capital, Johannesburg, to a farm outside Durban. He did daily exercises, prepared his own food, and gave up Western dress for simple Indian garb. In 1910, he founded a collective farm based on ascetic and cooperative principles. So, working together. Returning to India in 1915, Gandhi became the acknowledged leader of a nationalist movement. He taught his people to show forbearance. When a street mob in a small town rioted and killed people, he called off political actions throughout India. When mill owners were unbending and strikers became restive, he put his own physical well-being on the line by fasting until a satisfactory settlement was reached. And that was probably one of the first hunger strikes. In 1930, to protest attacks on manufactured salt, Gandhi, then 60, led a 200-mile march to the sea, where hundreds of followers illegally extracted salt from seawater. The event, reminiscent of the Boston Tea Party, triggered protests all over India. When British police attacked and beat a line of peaceful marchers, their brutality made headlines around the world. It was the beginning of the end for British domination, because he wanted his people to be free, from British domination. I mean, they were one of the big world powers, second only to Rome probably, in holdings around the world. Gandhi's influence was the product of a seamless web of body, mind, and spirit. By living out his ideals, he was effective in solving real, almost intractable problems that affected millions of people. This takes thought. You can't have a movement that is successful if it's all about the impulse, all about the passion, because those things fade. You have to have thoughtfulness to make lasting change. In his efforts to diffuse conflict and inspire cooperation, He showed wisdom grounded in moral vision. So he had a vision of what it should be like and what it could be like. Excuse me. So, he got people to cooperate in order to bring this about. And few of us reach the heights of intelligence and creativity or achieve the moral and spiritual heights Gandhi did. And few of us have such influential careers. But caring and concern for others, including the generations to follow, are important in any adult, as it is the work of one which chooses to devote one's life to. So, the generations following us are important. We're having our time, and will have had our time when we're older. It's time to prepare the next generation for life on this planet. And that's what a lot of people don't care about. There's a whole section of society that ascribes to me, now. Who cares about what happens 30 years from now? You should. If you were a mature adult, you should care about what happens 30 years from now. As with Gandhi, features tend to intensify or come to fruition in middle age. In this chapter, we ain't gonna read that. Okay, so that's where I'm gonna leave you today. We're just talking about book stuff there, and we'll get to that. I ain't giving you sneak peeks and previews on things. You'll just have to tune in and find out. But a middle-aged person is supposed to be concerned with the next generation. In India, when you're in your 50s, you become a teacher and you teach what you've learned up to this point before you retire and live a life of contemplation in the forest or your children's home or whatever. So as a middle-aged person, you should at least be concerned with the next generation. I had some good grandmas who taught us things that she knew to kind of help out, because our parents were working and busy and they didn't have time for us. They get a little time in every now and then. But the grandmothers invested some time and effort in us so that we would learn things that they knew. And that's what a middle-aged person should be concerned with. You got time for yourself, and that's good. You should take time for yourself, because you can only pour from a full cup. You can't pour from an empty one. But we need to be looking out, because our years are coming to an end at some point, and the next generation's coming on. So we should be concerned in what kind of earth, what kind of world we're leaving for these young folks. And that's where I'm going to leave you for today. Thanks for watching. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.